Breakfast with Christine Anu on ABC Radio.
3 years ago during the summer holidays, Steve Plain was enjoying the Aussie surf like millions of us do. He was at Perth's Cottesloe Beach and he was dumped by a wave like millions of us have been, you know. Only for Steve, he was driven headfirst into the sand. The incident nearly left him paralysed for life, but due to some extraordinary fate, he has defied his medical prognosis, and early next year will attempt to climb the world's 7 highest mountains. And Steve is here with us. Steve Plain, good evening.
Good evening, Christine. How are you?
Very good. Look, obviously you're fighting fit. You have quite a story to tell.
Yes, it's been, I guess, the last 3 years, it's been an interesting journey. But,
what were the conditions like at Cottesloe? Because I've been for a bit of a swim at Cottesloe Beach, and I've swum out to the buoy, and I've come back again, and I just wanted you to describe what the conditions were like that day that you felt you almost drowned.
Yeah, well, it was actually exactly at that buoy where the accident happened, and it was just an ordinary morning and relatively quiet, and just went in for an early morning swim and actually literally swam around that buoy, and on the way back in was just treading water, looking back out, waiting for a slightly larger set of waves to come in, and just started body surfing. I was swimming towards the beach to body surf a wave in, and that was the last thing I remember when I then got dumped and driven into the sand.
What's going through your mind at that point? I mean, you've gone head first into the sand. You're lying face down. Are you conscious? Are you thinking this is it?
Well, upon impact, I was knocked unconscious, and I guess for, like I say, most Aussies who have been dumped in a wave at some point in time, you just feel a little bit dazed, a little bit dizzy. So when I regained consciousness, so I wasn't unconscious for very long, but when I regained consciousness, just sort of felt all dazed and a bit numb, and still underwater. So tried to just move my arms to get my head above water.
So at this point you could still move your arms, right?
No, I couldn't. So as soon as I tried to actually move my arms to swim up to the surface, my arms were locked rigid and couldn't actually move them. So that's when I guess immediately realised that something a bit more sinister was wrong than just your everyday dump in the surf. So
do you panic at this point?
I was panicking. The immediate thing was just trying to get the next breath, and fortunately another wave came through and sort of rolled me over again, which I was then able to get, my head came above water and was able to get a breath. And then a friend also who was there at the scene at the time saw what was happening and came straight in.
So he's part of the Surf Life Saving Club in WA, yeah? At Cottesloe Beach?
The first person was a friend who I was actually down there with, so not part of Surf Life Saving WA,
okay.
But he stepped straight in to help me out and just held my head above water and stabilised my neck. And there were 2 surf lifesavers at the club at the time, and they actually saw what was happening, so came straight down and assisted from that point onwards.
Thank goodness for their hawk eyes.
Yes.
So how who was like how critical was everything? Like, so your head was being held above the water, you're being brought in, and they have to stabilise you. They can't move you because there's suspected spinal injury. They have to hold you in place. So what's going on around the first aid?
Well, that's correct, yeah. So when my friend came to help me out, he just grabbed me by my shoulders and supported my head between his forearms just to try and prevent my neck from moving. And when the surf lifesavers came down, because there was a bit of a shore dumper that was with the waves dumped on the shore, they actually took me, rather than bringing me straight in, took me out a little bit deeper just to get out of the dumping waves, and just held me stabilised in the water and got a spinal board, brought it out into the water to get me on a board, and then carried me up from there.
What would we do without these surf lifesavers, hey?
Absolutely, and they're training to register straight away that I guess they had no certainty of what the actual injury was, but to treat it as a spinal injury. I had someone drag me straight up the beach and further move my neck at that point in time because I had unstable fractures. Then the actual outcome could have been a lot worse. So for them to be able to sort of recognise with that training, be able to prevent any further damage was absolutely critical.
Yeah. We're talking to Steve Plain, who is going to do something really amazing, climb the world's 7 highest mountains in aid of supporting Surf Life Saving Western Australia and spinal injury as well, association as well. Now, you had quite, your initial prognosis was really quite severe. You had sustained multiple injuries. What do you remember thinking when the doctors gave you your prognosis?
I was really just in shock, to be honest. When the doctors first came, I remember a female doctor had taken the scans and initially assessed me in emergency, and just came and said quite straightforward that I had a hangman's fracture. And
a hangman's fracture.
Hangman's fracture, because apparently the injuries I sustained were sort of representative of what actually people sustain when someone is actually hung. But then she actually went into further detail of all the 3 unstable fractured vertebrae and contorted spinal cord, ruptured disc, dissected arterial artery, a whole host of complications. So once you started going into that, it was very daunting, but I guess I still was in somewhat disbelief. When it sort of really hit home, I guess, was my friend who had actually come to hospital with me made a phone call and thought it was important at that stage to get in touch with my parents. And so it was probably actually really when I called mum and said, actually verbalised myself that I've got a broken neck, that it then really sort of registered how serious it actually was.
Yeah. So, were you prepared to accept paralysis? Like, were you prepared for this? How were you going to sit with this, comfortable with this? How did you feel that you were going to deal with this situation once you were told you may not possibly walk again?
I wasn't prepared to accept it, no. And for a few days there was, it took several days until they were able to, while specialists had to get transferred from the initial hospital they took me to across the spinal trauma unit in Royal Perth. And from there, the specialists consulted on my case, and that took several days. And I guess all that uncertainty was that was probably the worst thing, is just not actually clearly knowing what the potential outcome was. But through all of that, I guess fortunately, touch and sensation came, while I still didn't have full movement, touch and sensation came back to my extremities reasonably quickly.
Oh, great.
So that gave a sort of relatively promising prognosis.
So this was after the swelling had gone down.
That's correct, yeah. So with a period of time in hospital, then slowly as sensation came back, then they were sort of more confident that I'd be able to make a full recovery, a promising recovery at least. The initial, I guess, one of the concerns was actually with having unstable fractured vertebrae. They wanted to fuse all the vertebrae to prevent any further damage at that time. And so had they gone down that path, that then would have meant losing full range of motion in my neck. Oh. So thankfully they opted for an alternative course of treatment. And if you look at me now, people wouldn't even know that I had the injury in the first place.
Oh, you've lived to tell the tale. How long did you spend in hospital all up?
It's about a week and a half in total until after they assessed my case and they decided to, with conservative management, put me in a halo brace.
What is a halo brace? Describe that.
I called it the medieval torture device. It's the worst thing I ever had. It's literally a metal ring or a halo around your head with 4 screws which actually screw into your head. Oh. And from there, there's metal braces that come down and connect to a large vest that you wear. So I guess similar to when you'd break an arm or a leg.
So this is to minimalise movement.
That's correct, yeah. So you can't like put a cast on your neck. So instead, they put this external fixation device on which entirely immobilises.
It makes you attractive.
Absolutely.
Extremely attractive to the opposite sex or the same sex. Now, so describe what the rehabilitation process was, because you've got this halo brace on to minimalise your movement, but yet at the same time, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yes, that's right. So I had the halo brace on for 4 months in the end, right through summer.
Oh, the best time of the year.
Yes, with this thick woolen vest, which I couldn't take off, and I couldn't shower, couldn't do anything. So I had that on.
Oh,
for 4
wow!
months.
You would have been really great to stand next to.
When you talk about attracting the opposite sex, yes. So had that for 4 months, and then finally got that off. But as you said, because hadn't moved my neck for 4 months, even once the halo came off, I still couldn't actually didn't have much movement at all. Plus, my neck was very weak, so I wore just a normal neck brace for another 2 months, and then started extensive physiotherapy after that to slowly rebuild range of motion and strength in my neck.
So what's the physiotherapy involved? What did you have to do? So was it gentle head turns and curling over, I'd imagine, or helping your hips move again, or what did it involve?
It was a very gradual process. Initially, it was nothing more than just simply turning my head from side to side. But at that point, my range of motion was maybe 10 degrees each way.
Oh, you take
side
that
to
for
side,
granted, don't we?
Yes, you do. So there's no sort of looking over your shoulder or anything at that point in time. But slowly building that up over a number of weeks and months, and then introducing weighted exercise to it as well. So using elastic bands to push against on my forehead, and then pushing into that to slowly build more strength in the neck as well.
Steve Plain is here with us talking about his injuries that he sustained when what is described as a simple accident, just having a bit of a swim down the beach, was dunked by a wave head first. But Steve, you have come up with this really amazing idea. How did you come up with the idea to mountain climb the world's 7 highest mountains, which you could possibly set a world record for?
That's what I'm aiming for, yes. So if all goes well, hopefully trying to do what they call the 7 summits in record time. But for me, the idea of mountaineering probably really started back in '98, I guess. I did a trek with Scouts, Everest Base Camp, and just seeing the Himalayas and seeing the big mountains at that point in time, I was absolutely intrigued and always wanted to go back and try some more mountaineering and alpine climbing. And I guess for one reason or another, with work commitments and other things, always sort of kept putting it off. So when I had this accident and initially in hospital, facing the prospect of not actually being able to do those activities, that was really what gave me the incentive to just set that as a goal to get out there and attempt these to slowly build up some skills for mountaineering and then attempt these climbs.
But this was before the accident. So what moment were you lying there or in bed, or what made you think, you know what, if I come through this is what I want to do?
That was pretty well my initial thought when they told me what the extent of my injuries. My initial thought was that no, I'm going to get through this and I will get out of here, and I will go and actually do the things which I've always kept putting off, and no longer put them off and just go do it.
So 7 mountains. You're going to kick off with Vinson in Antarctica. So wow, I didn't even know there was a mountain in Antarctica.
That's correct. So the challenge, or what I'm attempting, is it's called the 7 Summit. So it's the highest mountain on each of the 7 continents. Mm-hmm. So the first stop will be down in Antarctica in January. And people always think of Antarctica as just a flat polar region. But the mountain down there, it's actually 4,800 metres, so over double the height of Kosciuszko, actually.
Wows. Then you're on to South America.
Yeah, South America up to Aconcagua, which is much higher again, so that's 6,900. So it's the highest mountain in the world outside the Himalayas.
Whew.
And then continue around to Tanzania for Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
Then up to Indonesia for Kartan's Pyramid, and then actually come down to Australia and climb Kosciuszko for the highest mountain in Australia. Mm-hmm. Then to Russia for Elbrus, then up to Alaska to climb Denali, and then, if that all goes well, straight down to Everest and trying to do a summit of Everest in May.
Exactly what do you have to do to prepare yourself for all of this? Because this is awesome. Like my calves are hurting just listening to all of this.
Ever since my accident, throughout rehab and slowly just with this goal in mind, always been working towards that. There's probably been 2 aspects to preparing for it. One has just been the whole physical training and preparation at home here in Perth, but also I've over the past couple of years undertaken a number of expeditions just to build the skills and experience in the mountains. So my first trip was actually down to New Zealand and climbed Mount Aspiring down there. And that was just 11 months after my accident, actually.
Wow.
And from there, then had a month climbing over in Peru, and since done 2 trips to the Himalayas as well. And my last trip was actually just in May this year, where I climbed Lhotse, which is uses the same route as Everest, so actually spent quite a bit of time in Everest Base Camp and went as far as pretty well as far as Camp 4 on Everest, and then Lhotse goes off to to the right-hand side where Everest goes left. So that was the 4th highest mountain in the world. So that having a good run there has given me a lot of confidence going into what I'm now trying to achieve.
Steve Plain's with us here on ABC Radio, talking about conquering the 7 highest mountains, something that he felt he needed to do after a simple surfing accident at Cottesloe Beach in Western Australia in Perth. So you're doing this all in support of, and give it a plug, please.
So for Surf Life Saving WA and Spinal Cure Australia, and I guess the reason behind that, obviously with the connections through my injury, but I think, when WA at least, when you go to the beach, the immediate thing concern most people think about is sharks, but no one really appreciates the dangers of the dumping waves.
Yeah.
And the day I was admitted to hospital myself, 3 people came in with spinal injuries that one day alone.
Wow.
So it sort of really highlighted just how dangerous it actually is, and the work that the volunteer surf lifesavers do in protecting our beaches and the beachgoers there. So wanting to try and sort of give something back to those that have helped me through that. And with Spinal Cure Australia, the other thing that really hit me when I was in hospital was when the doctors were talking through my injuries and what I'd sustained, and my immediate reaction was, well, okay, what do we do to fix it? And there is no way currently to cure a spinal cord injury.
Right.
It either heals by itself or it doesn't. So Spinal Cure Australia doing some fantastic research into actually developing a cure for spinal cord injuries, so people who are in wheelchairs can actually get up and walk again. So I think that's absolutely fantastic, and would love to try and help support and promote that. And
what's this project that's just been launched by them?
Yes, that's called Project Edge. So they're working together with a US professor at UTS in Sydney, and it's a 5-year program that they're working on, and through that hoping, they've already getting preliminary results with people who were quadriplegics, being able to start to move hands and feet and things again. So a 5-year program there, and hopefully get some really positive results out of it.
And you talk about prevention is better than cure.
Absolutely. I guess that's where, with the work that Surf Lifesaving do, had it not been for them, then in trying to help prevent injuries at our beaches. Obviously, once injuries occur, yes, you won't be able to cure them, but the work that they do to try and prevent it in the first place is definitely the preferred option.
Yeah, they're first on the scene, aren't they?
Yeah.
Now, you've just you've just attended something that was launched today, Summer Surf Life Saving?
That's correct, yeah. So it's the summer launch for Western Australian Surf Life Saving over here. So just having a function with them to kick off the true start of summer here.
So who's going to accompany you on your travels? Are you on your lonesome?
Well, I'm organising and doing it primarily by myself. For Antarctica, to get down there, it's just with a commercial expedition. It's really the only way to get down there easily.
Yep.
And then for the rest of them, I've got a climbing friend from the UK. So he'll join me in South America, and the two of us will then do the remaining climbs.
So he'll join you after the Antarctica leg, which is what you're kicking off with.
That's correct, yeah.
Well, awesome. Wishing you all the best. And listen, great news on your recovery. And all the best with breaking the record.
All right, thank you very much. Lovely chatting with you, Christina.
You too, Steve. Take care. Steve Plain, he's an amazing Aussie who is doing wonderful work to promote awareness for Surf Life Saving Western Australia and Spinal Cure Australia's Project Edge program. I'm Christine Arno. You're listening to ABC Radio.